All right, guys, this should be the last video for these notes. So thank you for sticking along with these. Hopefully it's been helpful. Hopefully you got some out of it. If not, if you have questions, we'll talk about when I get back. So let's get to this. So going back to where we left off, talking the discrimination during the Reconstruction era. So during the 1870s, you had an additional effort made by white Southerners to regain political power. So you had the Redeemers, who were politicians who basically wanted to return the South to political rule by white men. And so how they did that, one, is they tried to discredit African-American politicians. All right. And so when they did that was they would make compromises to ensure white Southerners would gain positions in government. And so you look at right there, Hiram Revels is the guy, the picture right above me. And, he was the first African-American congressman. He was a Republican from Mississippi. All right. And so discrimination was still going around. Oh, skip one. So we get to the end of Reconstruction. And so in the election of 1876, you had a guy named Rutherford B. Hayes. It was running against a guy named Samuel Tilden. So Tilden actually wins 51% of the popular vote in basically all southern states. And some of the electoral votes were contested, and Republicans thought that some votes were miscounted. Okay, and so this would be a very big disputed debate. Okay, but a lot of the Southerners wanted Samuel Tilden win because he was in support of what the South wanted. They didn't want Rutherford B. Hayes to be there. So this is how they settle it. The Democrats said, you know what? Hayes can be president, but if Hayes is president, this is what we want. We want federal troops to be pulled out of the South, and we want Reconstruction to end. And basically, we wanted power to be returned to Southern Democrats or Redeemers, in saying that they would return to political office. Okay, and so that was the compromise of 1877. So Hayes pretty much wins this election, just to kind of appease the South, pretty much. And so that's how Rutherford B. Hayes becomes president. And so with the success of Reconstruction, we see that, one, African Americans play a role in politics through Reconstruction's end. So that's a really big thing. Number two is that public schools were opened by the Freedmen's Bureau, and they were open to all. So education flourishes. That's awesome. And then thousands of free African Americans learn to read and write. Okay. I know we hate school, and I know we hate things like that, but let's be honest, y'all. If you can read and write, that's a very powerful thing. And so making thousands of free African Americans learn to read and write, that was a huge step for the African American community, because in slavery, they weren't taught that. All right. And so this was a huge step, making African Americans more educated, giving them more opportunities for success. All right. And then we had the failures of Reconstruction. One, race relations didn't improve. Okay. White people did not like African Americans that much. And African Americans probably weren't the biggest fans of white people either. Okay. Because there was a lot of tension between the two groups. The Ku Klux Klan grew. That was not good. The race riots occurred in the South. Government corruption increased. And these redeemers, they would regain control. And so was really Reconstruction a success? It did a lot of great things, but it also did a lot of not so great things. So, I mean, it's debatable, but I think if we really have to boil it down to it, I think Reconstruction, there was some vital success that it did give us, even with all the little minor stuff that went wrong. So post-Reconstruction, we have what is known as the Jim Crow laws, okay? And so when these redeemers took control of the South, they disenfranchised, or they took away the black vote through various loopholes, okay? And so they basically went around the 15th Amendment, and they would make all these laws that basically kept black people from voting, okay? And so this would infringe on the 15th Amendment, but it would seem like it was justified through these Jim Crow laws. So look at some of these laws here. We had the 8-box law. Okay, so 1881, you had to put your vote in the correctly labeled ballot box. Why was that an issue? One, a lot of African Americans couldn't read, okay? And so if you didn't put the one that was correctly labeled because you couldn't read it, then your vote didn't count, okay? So that was a discrimination law right there. You had the poll taxes. You had to pay a tax to vote. A lot of African Americans were not that rich. They couldn't pay, okay, because they just got out of slavery. They didn't really have jobs. They weren't as wealthy as the white people were, okay? So this is another Jim Crow law. Literacy test, like the 8-box law. You had to read a part of the Constitution to answer questions. A lot of African Americans couldn't read. So this is another law used to keep African Americans from voting. Okay, these are the Jim Crow laws. Then you had the grandfather clause. It said if your grandfather voted before the Civil War, then you could. Okay, nobody's grandfather of the African American community voted before the Civil War. Okay, so this is a blatant law used to keep African Americans from voting. Okay, it's a very terrible thing, but it went on for a while in the South. So then we had this court case, a very big court case called Plessy versus Ferguson. In 1896, the Supreme Court established the principle of separate but equal or facilities for blacks and whites. Okay, and so this led to de jure segregation or legal segregation, and it negated the equal protection provisions of the 14th Amendment and hastened the enactment of more Jim Crow laws. Okay, so this is when we started seeing, bathrooms and facilities like that of separate for separate races. Okay, so black people would have their bathrooms, white people have their bathrooms, separate water fountains, separate schools. This is where segregation starts in the Plessy versus Ferguson court case. One of the biggest court cases in American history. Probably in the top 5 for sure. Skip that. Was that the last one? Okay, don't worry about that. So that's pretty much it for the notes. Make sure you got all the assignments taken care of here. Like I said, if you have any questions, please, write them down, save them somewhere, and ask me when I get back. Because I'd love to answer any questions and make sure we are clear on everything. Because I hate not being here for this. So hopefully this worked out just okay for us to talk about Civil War and stuff like that. We'll be having our test on the Friday after I come back, maybe not the Friday after, maybe a little sooner than that. We'll talk about when I get back, okay? But besides that, just make sure you get all the work done. And yeah, if you need about watching videos, watch any videos. Besides that, tell the sub that they look cool, even if they don't. And y'all have a great weekend. So, deuces.